Hi, host Eric here. Host Talking to Famous People. I'm here with host Zachary. Abraham is in the house, and an assortment of other famous persons, whom I shall endeavor to name right now. INFP listener, my supervisor is here. Callum, INTP Red, a new arrival and a new participant in Go to Me. JC, old friend, and of course host Zachary, sitting here next to me on camera. So let's talk a little bit about the demonstrative function in socionics. Now, the fourth row of Model A, functions 7 and 8. When they say 7 and 8, as far as I know, they mean 5 and 6. So you're looking at 7 being the ignoring function. The ignoring function is also called the observing or limiting function. A person has very little use of this element. It is the rival image of the base function. So for me, that's going to be Ni. That's why I say it's 5 and 6. Okay, they call it 7 and 8 in socionics, but it's in the 5th and 6th slot if you think of slot placement by MBTI standards. Okay, so this is something that's caused me a great deal of confusion, and I want to make sure it's clear for everybody watching. 7 here, ignoring function, for me is an ENTP. That means it's my Ni function, and it's the one that's opposite of your dominant function. A good way to keep the numbering thing in mind is it's just like normal, except where 3-4 would be, you stick in 8-7 and then proceed onward. So it goes 1, 2, 8, 7, 3, 4, 5, 6. Anyway, so this is actually the 5th one in the stack. It's after your it's after SI for me. It's that one. So okay. The ignoring function is also called the observing or limiting function. A person has very little use of this element, as it is the rival image of the base function, representing an antithetical approach to the same domain. It lies in the subconscious as a persistent annoyance to the individual. Therefore, he or she tries to ignore it. When lectured by another on the use of this ignoring function, the individual sees it as superfluous information, for he or she knows how to use the function well, but chooses not to use it in favor of his or her more convenient base function. Usually, the base function creates byproducts leading to the ignoring function, but the way it describes such information is very carefully chosen to fit the view of the leading function. Unless you decide to actively attack it in a certain domain, like I do in music, where my language is very much favoring Ni over Ne, and I'm learning to reject my natural base function in that one area at least. Okay. A person limits the expression of this element in public in favor of the base function, but sometimes uses it extensively in private. Okay, well, that's what it means for me, I guess, and can call upon it when necessary. For example, an SEI, that's an ISFJ in Myers-Briggs terms, usually defaults to his base function and shies from activities that are highly physical or cause conflict. But if inevitable confrontation arises, he is able to use his SE and become fiercely coercive and quarrelsome for short periods of time. Again, that's an ISFJ, leading with SI, being able to manifest SE for sure when need to. The extreme avoidance of this function can make it appear weak at times. However, when engaged, it does not cause the same kind of psychological stress as a weak function, instead creating a kind of boredom or malaise. Or you learn to metacognate your way into appreciating and utilizing it effectively, which is the ideal goal. Okay, so socionics is often interested in what causes problems, and so it's framed like that. Let's look next at the demonstrative function before I open up to the other types, how they experience these functions. 8, demonstrative function. This again will be your 6th in Myers-Briggs numbering. That's the one that comes correlates with TI for me, which would be TE. My demonstrative function is TE. Your demonstrative function is your 6th function if you're used to numbering with Myers-Briggs functioning. Okay. A person uses this element mainly as a kind of game or to ridicule those he thinks take it too seriously. They often intentionally go against its conventional usage simply to prove a point in favor of their creative function. However, this function is used quite often in private to produce information of its element to support their creative function when focusing on making contact with the external world. A person will often have just as sophisticated an understanding of this function as his or her leading function. Unlike the ignoring function, it plays a major part in a person's worldview, since it's as the vulnerable function of one's dual, it requires especially delicate attention. Thus, when a person is given information regarding the element in the demonstrative function by someone else, they will tend to take it as obvious information that is irrelevant to completely focus on. One will often use the demonstrative function to defend and further support their beliefs made in the vulnerable function. The demonstrative function is easiest function to use after the base function, yet often occurs sporadically. When one experiences a problem regarding this function, one must correct it.
What's the vulnerable function?
Okay, the vulnerable function is, I believe, SI for me and FE for you.
Right. So it's just an inferior function.
Yeah, the inferior one. And the
I would
other
use NI to support claims made by my FE.
You would use, right, you'd use NI to support claims made by your FE, correct.
So I'm going to assume people feel a certain way without having no information, basically.
You have your introverted intuition to give you the information. It's very reliable. You just don't use it very
Don't tell me how you feel. I know how you feel.
often. Something like that. Okay, so those are the thoughts on the demonstrative function and the ignoring function. Was that? Yeah, ignoring function. So I would love to hear any thoughts from the other individuals here, including the host Zachary, of course, if we have any thoughts that people wish to add. Host Zachary, you got any thoughts you want to start with?
So how do you think your extroverted thinking would be used to justify your SI claims?
Oh, well, I mean, that to me, that seems really clear. I want to be perceived as, I want to not just be perceived, I want to perceive myself as an entity or an identity over time that has certain stati, like successful or good at something or whatever, right? That's an SI weakness of mine that causes me to need to actualize in an external way to make it seem permanent to me, stuff that other people are able to do either internally or deal with only subconsciously. Welcome, Claudia.
Vulnerability function is the same as the 7th.
I'm sorry, say again?
JC said that the vulnerability function is the same as the 7th.
I believe that's the place of least resistance. Do you think those are the same reference points? Let me make sure. You might be right, JC, and if so, I want to make sure we correct that right now. If anybody else can verify, that would be a lot easier, actually, because everything moves super slow when I'm recording, especially when I got more than one camera going. So if somebody else can verify that. We were looking for the name of the 4th function versus the name of the 7th function in Socionics.
I'll look at that.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, regardless, it would make sense to me that TE does, in fact, enforce the 4th function as named per MBTI, not Socionics, for me, because I see my 4th function as being my identity management function that helps me to understand who I am as a person that exists more than in the moment. And that NE is a very in-the-moment kind of an existence where I'm thinking about what's around me right now and what seems fun right now and how to play next, you know? So,
yeah, function 4 is the vulnerable function.
Okay, function 4 is the vulnerable function, and 7 then is known as the place of least resistance. So, vulnerable versus most vulnerable, basically.
Well, it says that function 4 is called the vulnerable function. It is known between socionics advocates as the point of last resistance.
Okay, so then, okay, thank you. That actually clarifies it. There we go. So, in fact, it's not, you're right, it's not SI, it is FI. It says TE is used to make manifest my FI needs, not my SI needs. So I think I'm so distant from FI to a certain extent, I tend to collapse FI and SI into SI. I think of the feelings as best represented as memories of the past rather than as the feeling itself, nostalgia.
So your inferior and your 7th are connected then instead of the...
Well, I'm saying I tend to frame my personal 7th function stuff in terms of SI because I think of it as most of my emotional stuff that's... Because when I think of emotional stuff, I think of bad emotions. I don't tend to think of the good emotions as having any particular relevance or weight to anything. Those are just, those were happy times, so I don't have to worry about those times. When I think about emotions, I think of bad emotions. So when I think about bad emotions, I think about poor SI management because it means I haven't ever attended to certain aspects of the past that still continue to produce emotional reactions in me that are, instead of meaningful and enriching, maybe terrifying, right? I'd like, ideally, for my emotions to be a little bit less terrifying sometimes. So, in that regard, I think it's fair to say that I tend to conflate FI and SI because the terrifying emotions come from a sense of poor SI in my personal life. But the point is that she's right, JC is right, is that when they say vulnerable function here, they're referencing the 7th function, not the 4th. That is to say, they're referencing for me FI, not SI. They'd be referencing for you SE, not FE.
So my NI would be justifying claims made by the SE.
Right.
So basically, I'm going to eschew action and be prone to inaction because I'm still working on like the Holon, or I'm trying to find the truth still. So it inclines me towards non-action.
No, I think it works the other way around. That when SE starts pounding at the door loudly enough, your NI finds reasons to let it in and do something.
I see. Can you give me an example?
Well, you wouldn't have changed the channel art so soon if I hadn't changed my look. But it was such an obviously cool idea, and introverted intuition said, this is a complete, whole idea that you can execute right now. It'll get big impact. It's a really fun, cool idea to just suddenly change that. Because Lawrence Walker messaged me on Facebook, said, oh, did you have the new graphic prepped before you got a haircut? I'm like, what new graphic? What are you talking about, you know? And so I think that's an instance of an NI truth pounding at the door in the form of SE, right? Take action on this, Zach. You're in somewhere inside of your saying. And NI goes, well, it sure is true. And you go, okay, fuck it. Let's do it. Right? That's what I mean by that. Other thoughts on this demonstrative and or ignoring function? The ignoring one.
Yo, the graphics look really nice on the YouTube channel.
Really?
Thank you.
Yeah, they look really nice. And then Eric had, like, on his videos, on the bottom right, he added, like, this little, like, checkered looking TWFP thing. I thought that was pretty badass, too.
Yeah, he added that a while back. I like that a lot, actually. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Zach, I came on just to tell you.
Wait, say again, JC? We couldn't quite catch that.
I was complimenting Zachary's drawing.
Oh,
It was
cool.
good.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Welcome, Hami, as well. Okay, so this seems to have devolved a little bit from the topic to the examples of NI and stuff like that, which is cool. But it seems like a good stopping point as we get a couple new arrivals showing in. I'm working on keeping these videos at a more manageable length. This is 13 minutes. Under 15 seems pretty good to me. Thanks for watching very much, and use that memory wisely. There's cheese in that fridge. Go there right now. Find a knife. Find a plate. Cut some cheese. Write it down that you did so. Make a note of it. It's important. And then eat that cheese.